Hey Laila, happy spring. Today's the first day of spring, and I am actually going to read to you from the Rocky Mountains. I'm visiting my mom and dad out here, and so we're going to read chapter 4 of Goone Bird Greene, and then it'll be back home to Indiana, and there will be no exciting locations for the read aloud. Chapter 4. On Monday, Goone Bird stood in front of the class when Mrs. Pigeon told her that it was story time. The children barely noticed Goone Bird's clothes, even though she was wearing a ruffled pinafore, dark blue knee socks, and high-top basketball sneakers. Let's stop for a minute. A pinafore is kind of like the froofy slip that might go underneath a fancy dress. So kind of like a tutu, but one that's meant to go underneath a dress to make it poof out. Okay, ready? We'll go back to Goone Bird. The second graders and Mrs. Pigeon, too, were all much more interested in Goone Bird's earrings. The earrings dangled and glittered and were very large. "They're beautiful," Kiko said in an odd voice. "My grandma's house has doorknobs that look like that," Trisha announced. "And she has a sparkly chandelier in her dining room. My grandmother is very rich." "Do you have holes in your ears?" Malcolm asked. "My mom does. My mom went and had holes stabbed right into her ears with a needle." "I did too," Beanie called out. "I have pierced ears." "So do I," said Miss Pigeon to the class. She turned her head from side to side so that they could all see her small golden earrings. "No," Goone Bird said. "My earrings have screws, and they screw onto my ears. They have little screws that you turn clockwise to tighten and counterclockwise to loosen." Here's a picture of Goone. Barry Tuckerman thrust his arm into the air and he waved it wildly around. Other children had their hands raised too. "My mom has pierced ears," Barry said loudly. "Ben?" Miss Pigeon said next. Ben said, "My mom has pierced ears, and so does my grandma." "All right, class, all right," Miss Pigeon said. "Does anyone else have something to say which is not about pierced ears? Because it is time for Goone Bird to begin today's story." All the hands disappeared except one. Chelsea kept her hand high in the air. Miss Pigeon sighed. "Chelsea?" "My mom has a pierced nose," Chelsea told the class. "Oh, no," Kiko wailed. "I'm going to be sick." "Shh," the other children said. When the class was quiet, Goone Bird began her Monday story. The Prince, the Palace, and the Diamond Earrings by Goone Bird Greene. Once upon a time, before she moved to Water Tower, when she still lived in China, Goone Bird Greene was on her front porch playing Monopoly against herself. Goone Bird number 1 was the thimble and owned all 4 railroads in St. Charles Place, which she liked because St. Charles Place was magenta. Magenta's the color of my flower, Laila, today. Goone Bird number 2 was the car and was having a harder time of it. She owned Atlantic Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, and she liked the combination of yellow and green. She also owned Waterworks and the electric company, but unfortunately, she was in jail. Suddenly, just as Goone Bird number 1 tried unsuccessfully for the second time to throw doubles and get out of jail, she heard someone calling loudly, "Napoleon is missing! Napoleon is missing!" It was the prince, who lived next door. Hands threw it into the air, and Goone Bird looked impatiently at her classmates. "Are these really, really important questions, class?" she asked. "Because I have just barely started my story." One by one, most of the hands went back down. Mrs. Pigeon had picked up the encyclopedia. "Goone Bird," Miss Pigeon said, "I have a feeling that you know this already, but Napoleon Bonaparte..." She turned to the class. "He was the Emperor of France," she explained. "Ooh," Kiko said. "I love emperors." Mrs. Pigeon, still looking at the encyclopedia, went on. Napoleon was born in 1769. That's more than 200 years ago. Miss Pigeon, Miss Pigeon! Barry Tuckerman was halfway out of his seat, waving his hand into the air. Here's a picture of Barry Tuckerman. Yes, Barry. My grandmother once saw an emperor butterfly, but now it's extinct. It was purple, Barry Tuckerman said. Goone Bird sighed. Do you want to hear this story or not, class? She asked. I cannot wear these earrings all day. They are very heavy. Yes, we do, Miss Pigeon said, so please go on. Ready? Goone Bird asked the class. Everyone was ready, so Goone Bird continued. Goone Bird, the prince called, sounding very distressed. Napoleon has disappeared. Can you help us find him? Goone Bird carefully tucked all of the Monopoly money under the edge of the board so that it wouldn't blow away. There was a slight breeze. She'd had problems with money blowing away in the past. She kept her own money collection, which she carried with her at all times, safely contained in a Ziploc bag. Then Goone Bird set out to look for clues that might reveal the whereabouts of Napoleon. Napoleon was not the Emperor of France. He was a large black poodle. I said poodle, like the dog, Laila. Every hand in second grade class shot up in the air, even Felicia Ann's hand. Felicia Ann was always quiet. I knew that would happen, Goone Bird said. I just knew it. Time for an intermission. Miss Pigeon, do you want to deal with this? Mrs. Pigeon nodded her head. She thought for a moment, and then she announced, every child who has a poodle, put your hand down. 4 hands went down. Now, Miss Pigeon said, every child whose grandmother has a poodle, hands down. 7 more hands were lowered. Every child who knows a poodle who does interesting tricks or who gets into trouble or who ran away once, hands down. Other hands went down. And now there were just 3 hands still in the air. Beanie, what kind of dog do you have? Mrs. Pigeon asked. A golden retriever. Hey, Laila, I think that's what Judy is. Isn't Judy a golden retriever? That's lovely. Ben? I have a corgi, Ben replied. Good. And finally, Tricia. I don't have a dog, Tricia said sadly. I'm allergic to dogs, and my mother said that I can never, ever have one, or even a cat. Not ever, because I might have a terrible asthma attack, and then I would have to go to the hospital and maybe ride in an ambulance. And we understand, Tricia, and now let's get back to the story, because we still don't know what happened to Napoleon, or about the palace, said Kiko, and the earrings. Goone Bird shook her head a little so that the earrings moved and sparkled in a glamorous way. Listen for the word suddenly, Goone Bird advised. I put 1 in the story already, but I'd like to sprinkle in several here and there. Some other suddenlies will be coming soon. Goone Bird examined the prince's backyard. She saw a place where the ground was disturbed by the corner of the fence. Look, she said. See this bit of dog hair caught in the fence? That looks like Napoleon's. See, she said next, pointing to some newly dug earth. Here is where Napoleon wiggled under the fence. What a good detective you are, the prince said to Goone Bird. Goone Bird let herself out of the yard and through the gate. She sniffed. She listened. Suddenly, Malcolm called out, There's a suddenly! Good listening skills, Goone Bird said. Then she continued on. Suddenly, because of the clues that she smelled and heard, Goone Bird moved forward. There, at the end of the alley, was an overturned garbage can. And there, with his head inside the can, was Napoleon, eating garbage. He had coffee grounds all over his face, and an orange peel was stuck to one of his ears. You naughty thing, Napoleon, Goone Bird said. And she took hold of his collar, and Napoleon burped. Oh, no, Kiko cried. Not the garbage, not the burping. Shh, the other children said. Many hands were waving in the air. Miss Pigeon stood up. No stories about dogs eating garbage, she said firmly. Not a single one. All of the hands went down. Please, 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 tell about the palace and the prince and the earrings, Chelsea begged. I'm about to, Goone Bird said. Goone Bird took Napoleon back to his house. The prince asked Goone Bird to go to the palace for a reward. Did you get all dressed up in a ball gown? Beanie shouted out. Maybe a tiara, asked Tricia. I had not planned to describe my clothes, Goone Bird said, but since you ask, I'll insert a descriptive passage here. When she went to the palace, Goone Bird was wearing clothes from the L.L. Bean catalog. She wore island hopper shorts with front flat pockets and a pointelle knit tank top in sunflower yellow. The prince had on rugged canvas shorts and polyester and nylon pale khaki plaid short-sleeved. Malcolm disappeared under his desk. Ben picked up his arithmetic book and began to do some problems. Nicholas put his head down on his arm and he closed his eyes. Goone Bird stared at them. Am I boring you? She asked the boys. Yes, the class all shouted out in unison. All but Felicia Ann, who was silent, and Kiko, who was not bored at all. What color were the island hopper shorts? Kiko asked. I hope that they were blue. As a matter of fact, they were deep sea green with true blue stripes down the sides. I might wear them to school on Wednesday. Oh, thank goodness, Kiko said. I'll continue now, Goone Bird said. It doesn't matter what clothes the prince had. The main character in this story is Goone Bird, and it is important to tell a lot about the main character because the main character is right smack in the middle of everything. All the others are just minor characters, and it is boring to tell about their clothes. Or you could call them secondary characters, Miss Pigeon pointed out. Excuse me for interrupting, Goone Bird, but I'll just write that on the board. Secondary characters. Goone Bird waited patiently while Mrs. Pigeon wrote, and then she breathed deeply and was about to continue, but she looked at the class. She walked down the classroom aisle to Malcolm's desk, and she peered down under it. Malcolm was asleep on the floor. Ben was doing his arithmetic, and Nicholas was making his thumbs wrestle each other. His left one was winning. This is my fault, Goone Bird said loudly. I have failed to hold your attention. Of course, it didn't help that Mrs. Pigeon interrupted, but I blame myself for not inserting enough suspense into the story. Class, stories need suspense, Goone Bird said, so I shall try to add some. Shall I continue the story now? Yes, Miss Pigeon said. Yes, said the children, all but Malcolm, who was still asleep under his desk, and Felicia Ann, who never said anything. So Goone Bird continued. I'll start right off with a suddenly. She said, that always wakes people up. Suddenly, when they entered the palace, Goone Bird needed to go to the bathroom. Malcolm woke up. He popped up from under the desk. I have to go to the bathroom too, he said. Go, Miss Pigeon told him, and she pointed to the classroom door, and Malcolm hurried from the classroom. Did the palace have bathrooms? Beanie asked. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that I was supposed to raise my hand, she added. Yes, Goone Bird said, the palace had 2 bathrooms, a gentleman's and a lady's. And what about the diamond earrings? Tricia asked. I'll finish the story now, Goone Bird said. When she came out of the ladies' room, Goone Bird Greene saw a gumball machine. In a palace? Kiko said. Shh, the other children said. Goone Bird continued. Goone Bird had not had a gumball for at least 4 months. She wanted one really bad, and she had brought her money collection, since she always carried it everywhere in a very heavy Ziploc bag. Her arms had developed big muscles from carrying her money collection. Goone Bird stopped the story for a moment and held up her arms to display her muscles. Then she went on. So Goone Bird took a penny from her money collection and put it into the gumball machine. But instead of a gumball, out came a diamond earring. Hold on, my page flipped forward real quick, Laila. It was quite a pleasant surprise, and she screwed it into her left ear. But after that, she felt a little lopsided. But she could see that there was another diamond earring inside the gumball machine. So she put another penny inside, and she got a blue gumball. It probably matched the true blue stripes on her sea green shorts, Kiko pointed out in a very loud whisper. Oh, I should whisper that. It probably matched the true blue stripes in her sea green shorts, whispered Kiko. Shh, said the class. And Goone Bird continued. Goone Bird put the blue gumball into her mouth, made a large lump in her cheek. It tasted like spearmint. She felt doubly lopsided now, so she took out another penny from her money collection. She put it into the gumball machine, and this time she got a yellow gumball. She put the yellow gumball into her mouth, and now she had a large lump on either side of her face, so she wasn't quite as lopsided, but her head still felt lopsided because she had only one diamond earring. So she put another penny in, and she got a red gumball. She put it into her pocket to save it for later. And now her hips felt lopsided. She took out another penny from her money collection, and this time she got an orange gumball and put it into her other pocket. Now her hips weren't quite so lopsided, but she still only had one diamond earring in her left ear. Goone Bird stopped the story, and she looked at the class. Okay, class, I am going to jump ahead now, she said. Miss Pigeon, is there a word for when an author jumps ahead in a story and skips over some of the things? Miss Pigeon thought about it. When an author jumps backward in a story, it's called a flashback. So maybe jumping ahead could be called a flash forward? Well, Goone Bird announced, I am flashing forward. After 20 minutes, all of the pennies in Goone Bird's money collection were gone. All the gumballs in the machine were empty. So now Goone Bird had 67 gumballs, 2 in her mouth, 2 in her pockets, and 63 in her Ziploc bag. Also, she had a pair of very large, glittery, dangly diamond earrings. And when they saw her in the diamond earrings, everyone in the palace, including the prince, 2 motorcycle guys, and a lady in a wheelchair cheered, hip, hip, hooray! And then they hugged and they kissed and they did a short but quiet, beautiful ballet dance. The end. What a lovely story, Miss Pigeon said, and the flash forward was very effective, Goone Bird. I'm so glad you finally got the second earring. Here's a picture of Miss Pigeon. Goone Bird turned her head from side to side so her classmates could admire her earrings. All of the children clapped. Did the prince ask you to marry him? Kiko asked. What are you talking about? Goone Bird said. The prince, Prinns, are already married. Mr. Howard Prynne is married to Mrs. Amanda Prynne. 1 Prynne plus 1 Prynne equals Prinns, Prinns. The Prinns live next door to me with their dog Napoleon. Oh, the children said. Prinns, Prinns. Barry Tuckerman jumped up and was waving his arm frantically into the air. That was not a true story, Barry called out. I tell only absolutely true stories, Goone Bird said impatiently. How many times must I tell you guys that? No, it wasn't, because I've seen a lot of pictures of palaces, and they have throne rooms and red carpets, and people get all dressed up in ball gowns, and... Barry, Goone Bird said with a sigh. What am I going to do with you? What do you mean? Asked Barry. You're talking about a small P palace, but I was talking about a capital letter ice cream shop called The Palace, where they have bathrooms, Beanie suggested. And a gumball machine, Chelsea said, with diamond earrings. Exactly right, Goone Bird said. And she took her seat, and then carefully she unscrewed her diamond earrings. Ow, she said, these really hurt. Malcolm returned to the classroom. Did you get out of jail, Goone Bird? He asked. Goone Bird looked unhappy for a moment. No, she said. Napoleon ate my Monopoly game. That's the end of chapter 4, Laila. It was a little bit of a long chapter. I hope that you're getting strong and healthy in the hospital. I hope that you're getting all of your feisty, sassy spirit back. And I will be very excited to see you really soon when I get back from Colorado.